Welcome to Santa Barbara Talks with Josh Molina. It's such a pleasure today. This is sort of a special Goleta edition with one of my favorite council people, Stuart Kasdin. And I got to tell you, Stuart, I cover a lot of meetings, but I always enjoy when I do get a chance to go to Goleta and cover those meetings. Your humor, your charisma, you're so funny, you make it a lot more interesting to take down quotes for a reporter sitting in the back of the room. And so I'm looking forward to this podcast and tapping into a little bit of those conversational skills and talking about your future. Let's start off with the fact that we're in an election year, okay? And you've served on the Santa Barbara City, you've served on the Goleta City Council for 2 terms. And what's the deal? What's the news? Are you planning to run for a third term to serve the good land?
I will. I will run this fall and looking forward to. I enjoy it. I guess, at the end of the day, I do think I enjoy it, and I think it's fulfilling. So it's
Yeah.
it's good to do.
Yeah. Well, that's great. You're actually my representative, and now we have these district elections, even in these small cities such as Goleta. And, Stuart, you're kind of, and I mean this with all respect when I use this term, but, you're kind of a brainiac. You're kind of wonky. You have some savant tendencies about you. You're a smart guy, right? And so,
Thank you.
sometimes that actually shows during the council meetings and in some of your decisions. You really think these things through. Talk to me about Goleta from your perspective and, some of the things that you're really pleased about, you're happy about, the things the city has done well in recent years, and some of the reasons why you want to continue to serve, why you want to run. What's ahead?
Do I have to sound smart when I do it?
When I try to sound smart, you can tell I'm trying. With you, Stuart, you just are. So just be yourself.
Sure. Um, I guess there's. So I used to work in the federal government as a staff person, and uh, this is a good wonky answer for you. So you look, and one of the things I noticed at the time was that people in Congress and staff, what they wanted is the outcome. They wanted to see the results. They wanted to see more money for this project or that project, and that they could talk about and say what have we accomplished and so forth. Staff, from my experience, where I was, had a very different orientation. We focused as much as anything on the process. How was the process done? Was it transparent? Are we choosing the best project? If you did a cost benefit analysis, for instance, would you select that project? Or are we being diverted to different projects that aren't necessarily the best? So staff have this broader kind of perspective. And I think we're doing, it's always a challenge so coming back to Goleta, how well are we doing in terms of establishing kind of processes of making transparent decisions, why we're choosing this project over that project or this location over that location, why we're making those choices that the public can see, and that we're choosing the best ones, and I think we're doing well. Not, we're never 100% or anything like that, but we've made changes over time. So we've created certain committees, we've shifted money from kind of distributed in an ad hoc kind of way, just off the dais, to a formalized process of decision making and tying things to general plans. So I told you, this is really a wonky response, but I guess I think that is not something the public necessarily is clamoring, more cost benefit, more cost benefit. But I find it satisfying in a sense
Yeah.
that to know that we're making progress on something like that and doing better at it.
Yeah, I want to ask you about some specifics. And before I get to the potholes and the ones near my house, I want to start bigger picture. Okay, housing. So Santa Barbara County just went through this big housing element process. So of course the city of Goleta did as well. And then there was this big rezoning effort. And I just want to talk to you. How do you feel today about where we're at with this whole rezone process? As we know, the Glen Annie, the Orchard, the San Marcos Growers, there's so many of these sites that are not in the city, but are right around the edges of the city and affect everything that happens in the city limits. And you were outspoken along with other members of the Goleta Council about the impacts to Goleta from these rezones. How do you feel today knowing Glen Annie got through, San Marcos Growers got through, the Orchard did not go through? I don't know what that means for how they're going to proceed, but can you talk a little bit about this housing situation and the impacts on Goleta?
I mean, how I feel, it's sort of, do I want to look at glass half empty, glass half full kind of thing? That when, so so for instance, with respect to Glen Annie, it was initially proposed at 1,500 units.
Hmm.
And then the state said, that's ridiculous. We don't believe that that's a credible number, in essence, is their response, and pushed it down to 1,000. And that's where the county wanted to rezone it. I still, always wondered, how on earth are they going to accomplish that? How are they going to do something like that where the impacts, especially traffic, are going to be so pronounced? You think of the high school right there and how already it is crazy. And when we went, so my son's going into high school this year, and in the orientation, they gave guidance on how to drop your children off if you need to, how to avoid the traffic jams as part of the standard discussion that they would offer parents.
Mm-hmm.
And that's before 1,000 units are added onto that corridor. So, it's going that direction, but going, to Glen Annie, to Hollister or to the 101, it's just hard to imagine. And so where I take some comfort is from the fact that the county originally was thinking of solving that problem of the traffic by essentially saying we were not going to try. They were going to amend their comprehensive plan, which is their general plan, which the general plan included language saying that you can't destroy, undermine, affect the traffic circulation, create congestion beyond these objective standards. You've heard these level A, B, C at the different intersections at peak hours, and they were planning on just saying, we're not going to abide by that. We're just going to drop that standard and allow our public works people to just come up with something that seems good enough. So the Glen Annie developers were planning, they were saying, we're going to put in a traffic circle there at Glen Annie, at Glen Annie and Cathedral Oaks. And that would work if they also included a transporter inside to teleport people to other locations from once they get into the traffic circle. So they drive into the traffic circle, get into the teleporter, and that would take them to Santa Barbara or any other location. Then that would work fine.
Yeah.
But, without having that additional technology, eventually they do leave the traffic circle. It's not like the traffic circle is the end destination. So, and then once they leave it, we're back to where we were. So the good news is they dropped that. They dropped that interest, that attempt to change their general plan. And so they will have to either mitigate the traffic impacts or reduce the size, the density of the project there. And, so in terms of the glass half full, hopefully that whatever results there, they're going to figure out one way or the other how to make it fit in the location. It was always a terrible, there were attractive things, I'm sure, because it's, big open space. It's the landowners are enthusiastic about developing it, but there were always major problems for a large scale development of that sort. So, it's for housing in general, we have these various objectives. So, as far as Glen Annie, the positive is at least it won't sort of create this crater of atomic blast crater for impacting the neighborhoods.
It's not as bad as it could have been.
Yes, it's there was an expression. This is also on the wonky side of it was Daniel Patrick Moynihan had this line of defining deviancy downward, and very good alliteration. And but that we come to accept things that previously we thought were unimaginable or unacceptable. And that's where, at this point now, sort of it's baked in the idea that we're getting development in some of these locations like Glen Annie and Eastern Goleta. And now we're trying to, we recognize and accept that. And how do we make that work for the areas? How do we make that, not destroy the neighborhoods? How do we make the transportation effective? So for the Eastern Goleta Valley ones, so that they, maybe there'll be agreements with Cottage, will there people who live in the area who work at the hospital can buy homes at in some of these new developments. What can we do to make it work best?
Yeah. Let's talk about that housing issue. People who don't know you, maybe have heard some things about you, might come to the false impression that, you aren't a progressive, far left, sort of housing first person. You are obviously for housing. You obviously support the need for more affordable housing and workforce housing in a community. Can you talk a little bit about, why and how you can distinguish this issue of saying, not all housing is what we need. We need to target the workforce housing, because there are some people who just believe more supply, no matter what, is the answer. And your perspective is a little more layered and nuanced. So can you talk about that?
Well, I appreciate that. But so we have different ways of getting housing that's going to be accessible or attainable by the workforce. And one is inclusionary housing, and that's where the developers of new properties are mandated by local ordinances. I think the county is only 15%, and Goleta it's 20%. So 20% of the stock of the new units are going to have to be below market rate. So the developer agrees to put in a deed restricting those units to below the market, and the state gives us the target levels. After that, there's, it's all bets are off as far as what the size, what the rents are going to be. So 80% is in essence what we're negotiating over. The 20% is fixed. So, that ordinance is already covered. And I presume nobody is going to, redo their ordinances to reduce that portion. So how do we get that remaining 80% to be more accessible to the public? That's going to be, for us and the county, our challenge. And there aren't, obvious easy answers. In some cases, we'll get there, but we'll use the impact fees. So new developers who come in will pay a certain impact fee, and we'll bundle those together and collaborate with entities like People's Self-Help Housing and others to build affordable units. But yeah, what I'm interested in is, let's say we build all of these units. So there's 7,000 or whatever it is units that are added in the South County area. We should, and we don't have this data now, be able to predict, like you said, there's supply and demand curves. We should be able to predict, all things being equal, uh, what rents would be if we added 7,000 units. Now, mind you, it's not like the housing market is the same thing as the wheat market, where it's just wheat. And even that is an exaggeration. For housing, some housing is rental units, some is for sale, some are big. In Glen Annie, they've got a bunch of housing that they're proposing to put that'll have ocean views. Well, unless the workforce that we're talking about are CEOs, they're not. You're not buying a house with an ocean view
Mhm.
as a worker. But where I'm going with that is, as we look ahead and see what these units are going to be, maybe we consider how to constrain it so that there's more single family housing, there's more studio apartments, and even more so, some micro units, some 350 square feet, so things like that, that the working homeless, that students, that others would be able to use. And so we 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 can we do have some tools to be able to make that 80% more accessible, to provide some opportunities for the workforce.
Mhm.
But we'll have to be conscious about it. We'll have to work at it.
Yeah. When you first got elected, you largely ran on a campaign of there was so much traffic now from the housing that was approved by some of the original, not the original, the sort of the second tier of the Goleta City Council, the more business types, the conservatives, and all this housing that was approved, and then it got built over time, and then here it was with all this traffic. Um, that was sort of how you got elected. You campaigned on the fact that this was a lot. It was really quick, and it impacted our traffic. And I think a lot of people who are outside of Goleta don't quite understand what the people in Goleta think. Sort of like almost 100% in Goleta, the people I talk to, and this is a diverse group of people, they weren't fans of the Glen Annie project at all. They sort of felt like if anyone's got to get off the freeway at Glen Annie and Stork, it's already backed up into the slow lane on 101. And part of the year when the sun's coming, you're looking into the sun and a potential accident if you're not
Absolutely.
fully on your toes. And you got to veer to the right at the last second. And I think that a lot of people outside of Goleta don't really understand the day-to-day impacts that people in Goleta have. And so I'm wondering, sort of, how do you feel about the state of Goleta right now? When you're driving up Hollister by Costco, near the Target, over by the Smart and Final and Janine's, when you're in that area, do you still sort of feel like, oh my goodness, there's so much traffic, or do you feel like we're in a better place now? It's sort of stabilizing. What are your thoughts?
Well, we're not stabilizing because we just rezoned the area by Jubilee Church and a couple of other areas along Hollister. So there's something like 600 units that are potentially being added there. So, you know, we are not fully controlling our destiny. The state, and this is true for the county too, the state is imposing our, we're, we're not driving a lot of what happens. And all we can do is try and nudge the vehicle, if you will, this way or that way to see what we can do as best as we can. But we were mandated, as was the county, to come up with a certain amount of housing that was uh, contrary to what we wanted to see. So, where our vision was, and probably the county too, although I haven't spoken to anyone there, but was infill related. We wanted our planning vision was to see on existing sites, on underutilized sites, to see those inside town get developed and to preserve the open space, to preserve the ag lands. But the county, the state didn't accept that. They did not believe that there was a high enough probability that those would end up getting developed. And what would get developed, and they're correct, is the land where it's really less expensive to develop. Infill is more expensive, generally speaking. Underutilized sites, adding on top of buildings or whatever it might be, is more expensive. Converting an ag property is cheap, relatively speaking. You know, people look and wonder, did California start um, reducing the amount of housing over the past 10, 15 years? And part of that is there was a conscious effort to reduce sprawl. That the idea of not developing on the outskirts, further and further away, to preserve buffers from wildfire. All of that was partially intentional, as well as there wasn't water. That thought also reduced development. But the state said, we want to uh, ensure that we have new development coming on. So what we're going to do is require, we're not going to accept your housing element as you've proposed it with all these infill. We're going to require that you come up with ag sites and so forth. And so, we ended up with a lot of sites, as did the county, that we otherwise would not have chosen. So we're in a position of just, trying. For now, we are trying to see that we do it as well as we can, and uh, control as much as we can the impact. So we're going to have, let's say, a local preference ordinance to provide a priority to people who live near, or excuse me, who work near the new units. So to try and encourage that anyone moving into units are hopefully working in the area, which would potentially encourage more people to bike or use other alternative transportation means. If your job is a mile away from, or 2 miles away from where you live, you'll think about using an electric scooter, a bike, or something. If it's 5 miles, 10 miles, less likely. So that other things we can do can help reduce the traffic congestion and so forth. But so ours is trying to accommodate the impositions from outside as much as we can, and figure out how to work with it. We're not fully in control.
Yeah. A couple years ago, Roger Aceves ran for re-election. He did not get re-elected. Luis Reyes Martin was elected. And Roger was a Democrat, but he was very much like a conservative Democrat, old school Democrat. And then you got Luis on, who's very much a progressive Democrat. How are things working on the council from your perspective? There's some people might say, it's good to have someone like a Roger on there to sort of be a little bit of a opposition voice perspective, and it's not good to have sort of like 5 Democrats on the board who are going to kind of agree on most things. How is the council doing from your perspective? You feel proud about the work and the actions you've taken over the last couple of years?
Yeah, I think it's collegial. That as long as people are thoughtful, it doesn't, they're as long as they're not knee jerk about things, as long as they analyze the questions and focus on the details. But people come to council, they're prepared, they think about the issues, they care about the outcomes, and you can't really hope for much more than that. The the party affiliation, I mean, none of us are formally elected as Democrats or as Republicans or anything like that. So it's more, are you going to approach each issue with an open mind? Are you going to care about the outcomes. And I don't know if district elections, so now we've moved into a new era, if that will make people, in a sense, more focused on my district and regardless, in a sense, of the politics of party politics kind of thing and so forth. And I don't know. I'm just, I don't know how that will impact it. But I don't think we're fairly, we get along pretty well. We're pretty uh, effective in that regard.
Yeah. You're sending those joint letters to the county, so you must be agreeing on things.
That was an easy one, though. There are some that are tougher. The that wasn't a hard one, at least for me.
Yeah. Let me ask you about a couple of specifics. Old Town Goleta is about to start this restriping project, and I have a story that's coming out very soon, Monday, when this podcast goes public. Um, there's some contention, right? There's some concerns here. Essentially, Goleta is going to change it from 4 lanes in each, 2 lanes in each direction, 4 lanes total, to one in each direction, add a bike lane in each direction, and also have the diagonal back end parking on one side of the street, I believe. And there are people who support this project. There are people who say it's going to make it safer, more bicycle friendly, pedestrian friendly. You're going to be easier to cross, and they believe it'll help the business because I think there's a small increase in parking. But then there are others who are like, what are you doing? Hollister's a thoroughfare. And if you restrict it to 1 lane in each direction, you're going to create massive traffic jams. And then you got the whole Project Connect construction going on with those roundabouts. And they sort of foresee Armageddon, doom, like Old Town Goleta is going to come to a screeching halt. And I guess the city's going to do a restriping, kind of a temporary thing to see how it works. What do you think of this project? Is this going to be better for Old Town Goleta?
I mean, the short answer is, of course, I don't know. And that is, when this first came up, I forgot when. Oh, well, the initial inception of it was years ago. We've been talking about this for 4 or 5 years. And initially, it was talked about as a hardscaping thing, not a pilot program. But when it came up most recently for an actual vote in, I forgot when, a year or more ago, it was about $4 or $5 billion, and I voted against it at that point. When it came back a second time, and they had figured out how to get it to a little over $1.5 million, I was supportive of it at that time because we could view it in terms of being a pilot program and being able to evaluate whether it is working or not. So there, as I see it, there, as you laid out, there are 3 goals. There's safety, both for not just bicyclists, but also pedestrians. It'll be easier to cross the road when there's 2 lanes, and vehicles, because it is a traffic calming kind of idea where vehicles will be going slower. So there's safety is one of the things. It is not just a business area, it is a neighborhood. And so how it impacts the people who live there is important. The second goal is clearly circulation and congestion. Those people who are concerned are absolutely right, and it's reasonable and appropriate for them to be concerned about how it will affect traffic and along that street. And then the third is the impact on businesses. And I think it's important to recognize that not all businesses are the same, if you will. So, let's say Costco, they don't, all they have to do is open the doors and have parking, and people are coming from all around. But in contrast, there are a lot of businesses that in Old Town especially that are smaller and that don't have that kind of attraction. Now, I guess, a supermarket, people won't shop online to go to a supermarket, or the car parts or something, people will drive there. But other places really are suffering from the brick and mortar stores, like Old Town Antiques, which just went out of business. There, or the copy shops or the bookstore, things like that. Those are businesses that people are likely not driving from elsewhere to get to. But so part of the idea is, are there ways that we can, through this project, make Old Town more attractive? I was thinking of it as sort of treating it like a outdoor mall and
Mm.
make Old Town the attraction, because one of the characteristics of Old Town is its walkability, to get people to go to Old Town, to walk around. And what attractions, what lures can we have to get people to be to there? Uh, and it will require a certain amount. We'll have to do some rezoning, for instance, to, if we want to have more visitor attracting businesses. But so all of this is to say that we have three goals that we're trying to achieve: to help the businesses overall, to help the circulation, or at least not impair the circulation. I won't go so far as to say it'll help, and helping businesses also through the parking, and safety. And what we're going to do, and the whole premise of this, is that this is kind of a pilot. We're going to use some sort of adaptive management. We're going to evaluate how we're doing as we go along. Can we make changes to make it more effective? If it's not working, we'll get rid of it. So what I had proposed was, in essence, performance measures, that we're going to have metrics that evaluate how things are going. And we'll fix things as we go along if we see there's a problem. And if we can't fix it, if there really is some sort of, that turns out not to be a good project, that we made a mistake, we don't have to stick with it. There's no, we should be comfortable saying we were wrong, if that's the case. So none of us, we have traffic studies, for instance, that were done that indicate that it should be okay. But those are projections. Are they going to be right? We don't know. And they're a couple of years old now too. So I don't know, if it'll work, but we will, evaluate as we go along. Those measures will be public, that we can agree upon them in public meetings, what those performance measures will be. And we can post a dashboard kind of thing on the website, and people can see how we're doing in terms of this project. Is it succeeding? Is it making things safer? Is it helping businesses? Are we actually seeing a benefit to the local businesses? Are they seeing more traffic and so forth? And is traffic, is there excessive congestion? Did we just create a fiasco in terms of traffic? And so we'll do this, and we'll work with the public. We want the same thing. We all want the same outcome. So we're not trying to force anything that we think is going to be detrimental. If it turns out not to work and help the community, help the neighborhood, then we'll undo it.
Mhm.
That's the advantage of having it just be restriping.
Yeah. I was talking to Bob Wignott and Tom Aduno and some others, and they were saying things like, well, they got to dig up the pavement. They got to go in 2.5 inches and dig up the asphalt in order for them to restripe. And that doesn't sound like interim to me. That's sort of what they're saying. It's like, interim becomes basically an easy way to tell the public, we're phasing this in. But, it is almost $2 million project, I guess, for now, so, do you think it's reasonable if it doesn't work after, through the summer, that you would
Not
fix
through
it or go back?
We wouldn't have that short of time frame.
Okay.
And I don't know really what the time frame would be. As I would see it, we would, because as you pointed out, there's going to be construction of other projects along the way. And so we'll have to look, we'll have to give it enough time, both for it to be kind of established, and if there are any mitigating actions we can take as we go along. If we see project problems developing, can we make some adjustments? But so I don't know at what point we would say, the X number of years have passed and this is the project. We're seeing the effects of the project and it didn't work. It was not successful. And we would want to talk to, or I would want to talk to our public works people to get some estimate of what's a reasonable amount of time, what's
Right.
appropriate. But, if it's not working, we can fix it. And some of the 1.5 million is not, or 1.8, I think it is, as you said, is pavement related. Some of it is, I think, the traffic lights and synchronization, although I think actually some of that is reduced in cost because they did it digitally. But I don't know how much is just lost money.
Hmm.
But, if it's not, it certainly isn't worth keeping a bad project to avoid, because we spent money. It's a sunk cost. We're not going to, at least I'm not going to support keeping something we've done if it's not working, just because we spent money on it previously.
Yeah, and it should be noted, unlike State Street in Santa Barbara, and I know they're not, the same in terms of the role they play in the community. Um, Old Town Goleta works. Like it's pretty successful. There aren't a lot of vacant storefronts, maybe a couple that I saw recently. And it is a place for small business owners to operate these businesses, and residents live nearby and they use it, so it is, even though it doesn't, the facades, it doesn't look like Rodeo Drive or anything. It is a very successful commercial corridor, So I guess the challenge there is how do we make it better for people, pedestrians, bicyclists, without hurting the businesses?
Well, and I think, you raise a good point in that when we're talking about things that will help that corridor, there are things that make the properties more expensive, like the facades and so forth, that will spruce it up, if you will, but that don't necessarily help the businesses. The businesses typically are renting in Old Town, are renters. They don't own the buildings. And so if we do things that make the properties, you know, spiffier, they don't necessarily benefit. It doesn't automatically attract new customers. So the trick for us is going to be what set of activities, events, for instance, and having people give out samples or something like that. What can we do that'll attract customers, as opposed to just making the properties more attractive
Hmm.
and so to build in essence on, so Old Town has kind of an eccentric, little quirky uh, image, to build on that kind of thing, that you don't know what business you're going to encounter going around the corner, if it's going to be kind of a bookstore, a fortune teller, or whatever it might be. To
Or a
to kind of
dispensary, as we learned recently.
yes. uh, our city manager, or our city attorney, is named Megan. I haven't asked if she has a side gig or not.
I don't think so because they're not opening their smoking lounge. So
Okay.
probably.
Are you suggesting Megan, our city attorney, is smoking elsewhere then?
I'm
Right.
suggesting that there's no chance in HE double hockey sticks that the city of Goleta is going to allow a smoking lounge for cannabis. At least I hope not in my lifetime.
It's not come up yet. uh, I remember my sister lives down near Glendale, and there was a Weight Watchers, and right next to it on either side there was a ice cream store on one side of it. This was a little business. So the Weight Watchers was some place where people would go in and talk. And on one side of it was I think it was Baskin and Robbins, and the other side was a place called Big Mama's Pizza. And it was just here these poor people going in there and got on both sides. So I was just, if we did that would be our role model for the smoking lounge, to have Big Mama's Pizza next door to the smoking lounge. But that's just speculation at this point.
Let me ask you about the potholes in Goleta, specifically Phelps Road, your district, right by Gersh Park, near the apartments and some of the houses there. There are potholes in Cathedral Oaks. This is when we talk about what do people want from government, of course, like the core thing people complain about is like traffic, potholes, and roads infrastructure. And these are the things that really upset people. And of course, housing and all of this other stuff. That's a more layered conversation. Involves a lot of people more than just government. But potholes seem to be the thing that they turn to local government to say, why can't you fix the potholes? So what's going on with Phelps Road? Have you driven that? Rode your bike there lately? It is in horrible shape.
So, yes, it is in horrible shape. There's no explanation or justification for it. The good news is it's in this year's plan. So both Phelps and Cathedral Oaks will both be repaved this year. So that's something. But we've, definitely fallen behind in terms of it's been, so the city has set a target. There's something called the pavement condition index, and that all the cities and counties use as targets. And it's a number, and a city chooses a particular number, and it's an average of the different types of roads, a weighted average for the different roads. And so for us, the number comes out to 67. That's our target, is to invest enough to keep our roads at that amount. And the thing about roads is if you underinvest, they degrade. So the costs in the future rise the more we underinvest. And while we were really underinvesting, so at the point of the pre-pandemic, it was about 5 million or something a year was the amount that we had to spend. And post-pandemic, right now, it's up to 11 or 12 is the amount we'd have to spend to get to that target. We're not there. We're at right now, this year's budget about 5 or 6. And so we're hitting the priorities, and we're going to try and shift money there, but we're not hitting that yet. And that will be for staff their mission. Part of what's happened to us is sort of unfortunate, if you will, that some of the projects, so our CIP director, she said it's easy to eat an elephant. You just have to eat it one mouthful at a time. And the problem for us is that some of the projects, and notably Project Connect, all of a sudden we got served a whole, leg of elephant, financially speaking. So we had to come up with $20+ million in one fell swoop rather than $1 million or so a year. And that's hard to do in our budget. And so other things have gotten trimmed and pushed aside and so forth while we try to accommodate that. And so we've got to plan better in terms of ensuring that things like road maintenance are tackled, and we're hitting those targets that we previously legislated for. I mean, we passed resolutions for those targets. We've got to make sure that we're actually hitting those, and they're not getting put on as an afterthought. Part of the problem was in the past, and this is unfortunate, is that our funding for road maintenance is from a bunch of different fees, a bunch of different sources. So some of it was from impact fees, and that's in a special fund. Some of it's from the general fund and so forth. And so it was aggregated. So some of it was just getting a presentation, getting the information to know, okay, overall, how much are we coming together? How much are we putting together to hit these targets? We're doing that, and we know what it is. but now we have to make sure that we are getting there. And it's going to take a few years for us to get that together because we've had that big, like I said, lega elephant to have to consume. But I think, at least for me, I know what the problem is. And, we know what the issue is. We'll try and increase as much as we can. We can create a reserve fund, for instance, so if we have money left over from something, we can save it for the next year. We can bundle two contracts in one if that would give us a lower cost, two annual contracts. But yeah, it's a challenge, and we shouldn't be letting our roads get to the way they are in Phelps and Cathedral Oaks. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's a challenge, and people don't see everything government does. They just see the one part of the
Right.
daily life that is impacted. And so that's people like, oh, why can't the city of Goleta do this? And it's like, well, you can't do everything all the time, always, and it's priorities. But I'll be happy when those potholes get cleaned up, because I keep thinking, oh man, they're going to pay for my new tire. I'm going to get a flat tire here.
We're encouraging everyone to buy Jeeps, apparently. We should get a Jeep distributorship and a Jeep vendor in Goleta, and that would, there's a synchronicity there. It would tie together. We destroy the axles of cars, and they have to then buy Jeeps. So it all works out.
Yeah, and then you should have somebody in government, like as an investor in the Jeep company, so then I can just worry about conflict of interest, so corruption, yeah. Yeah, I have to say though, a good thing about Goleta, I don't know how you feel about this, because I know in the past you and the chamber have not always seen eye to eye, but Camino Real is vibrant. So many people go there. The parking lot is like Disneyland. I mean, it's so busy over there, and Target is so successful. Goleta is doing really well in a lot of areas, I think, commercially, in terms of sales tax. And of course, we have our hotels, and those have come up in recent years. And Goleta's got its open spaces, and we got those monarch butterflies and the Elwood Preserve. And people tend to glamorize Santa Barbara as being this heavenly paradise tourist destination, and they can keep doing that. But for people in Goleta, like we have a pretty good community here. And, I think a lot of people don't understand that, who aren't necessarily residents, but I mean, you spend time in Camino Real at all? I mean, what do you think when you're over there?
Oh yeah, I go there at least once a week to go shopping.
Yeah.
No,
I never see you in See's Candy though. Maybe you don't have a sweet tooth like me.
no, I don't. That isn't one of my. I think I was there for the ribbon cutting.
Okay.
I was actually there for the ribbon cutting. That was good. But no, there are certain places I need to stay clear of. Uh, but yeah, no, I'm there all the time at the marketplace, and no, it's great. They have really important businesses for the area that are essential, uh, that everyone needs, and they have available parking, so you don't have to worry about will I be able to find a parking space and cruising around, or they'll be charging me for how much and how big.
You don't have to move your car in 15 minutes, because that's
Right.
all it takes to pick up a takeout order.
Exactly. Not that I'm weighing in on their business. But yes, so we're fortunate. We really are to have such a great, and they're also just great neighbors. The folks who are there they work with us. The manager, the owners, they're terrific neighbors.
So Stuart, let's talk a little bit about you. I kind of let off the podcast sort of talking about you and your uniqueness, the things you bring to the council. And you have a whole other life, a double life, not necessarily a secret life, but you're you're a teacher. You've been a teacher for a number of years, a professor, and you've taught at universities. Right now, you're teaching at Santa Barbara City College, and I guess, political science classes. So can you talk a little bit? I mean, that is your deal, right? I mean, you don't
Right.
go to school to be on the Goleta City Council. You're a professor, right? So can you talk a little about your background and how you got here?
Well, I guess I was working at federal government in the Office of Management and Budget. I had gotten some master's degrees before. So first, I was in the Peace Corps years ago doing ag extension work in Ecuador, and I came away from that experience. This is a little, long-winded, but
Uh-huh.
I came away with that experience that uh, they had plenty of expertise. I was in Ecuador and the highlands, and they had plenty of expertise in agriculture. Excuse me. But at least it seemed to me that the breakdown was in terms of the institutions of getting the government participation and so forth. And so it motivated me to be more interested in economics and public administration and things of that sort. And so I got a master's in that, and then I got sort of an opportunity to join the federal government, OMB, and so that's the White House Budget Office, and so I worked there doing the USDA budgets and so forth, the Forest Service and NRCS. And I was there about 12 years or something like that, doing budgets and regulations and such. And I guess I got weary of doing it. And so I guess, you do this stuff all the time. And I wanted to step away and have a chance to think about what I was doing, to have a chance to kind of, I'd eaten all this, I want to digest it. And then, so I left that job and went back to school at UCSB to get a PhD there. And, part of it was that chance to be able to think through what I had experienced, what I had learned, and process it and understand, you know, what it meant and so forth, and how to do things better and so forth, rather than just keep doing the same things. And so I did that and ended up, I got a PhD in political science, and then went to work at George Washington, where I was in their School of Public Administration, and I taught public administration, public budgeting,
Mhm.
and I I enjoyed that. It's and stayed there until essentially my son was. My wife works here at UCSB, and so when my son he was going to preschool in both in the Santa Barbara area and in the DC area. So we would be juggling both vacations and sabbaticals, that is, and I was on semester and she was on quarter, and how do you maximize the amount of time that we're in the same location? Anyway, once he was entering kindergarten, it was time for us in essence to choose one location. And so I quit, and we settled here. So I chose Goleta. Uh, I chose Goleta, and so at that point is when I was trying to decide what shall I do. I have all the opportunities, of all the, I have a chance to decide, and that's when I decided to run for city council. There was actually there wasn't a vacancy, but I ran anyway,
Yeah.
and and then got a job as well at City College.
What did your parents do?
My parents were teachers.
Teachers? Mhm.
Yeah, they taught in. So my father was actually he was an assistant principal ultimately in the Albert Einstein School in the Bronx. So this is back in New York, and famous graduate was Wesley Snipes. That's
Oh,
their most, as far as I know, their most prominent. And I don't know if it's whose district it is, and I don't know if that's AOC's district or not. But in any case, uh, so he was there, and then when I was 13, my mother went back to school to become a teacher. So that's what they taught.
right. So you taught at George Washington and Santa Barbara City College. What do you enjoy about teaching?
Uh, I guess it's giving people the tools to think through issues. I try not to give them, here's what I think. I guess, yeah, this comes back to the where we started the conversation in some ways, and that I think institutions matter, and it is the the rules of the game that you establish. And if I can get the students to understand how the the institutions of government work, how the voting procedures work, and all these things, get them to have the knowledge of these things, then if they are conservative, that's fine. If they're liberal, that's fine. As long as they have enough knowledge of how the government works, what is the intent of government, our government and so forth, the design, then I'm satisfied.
Mhm. And what's the biggest differences between teaching Santa Barbara City College students and university students in your perspective, other than, freshman, sophomore versus seniors?
I mean, it's a tough comparison because they were master's students at George Washington.
Mhm.
So they're getting a Master in Public Administration or Master in Public Policy. So they were older, and it was much more specialized what I was teaching. Uh, so it's a it's not really an apples to apples comparison. These guys are it's really diverse. The city college, when we will have high school students that are taking classes. You'll have local, students who are 18 plus. You have international students coming in. It's just a very diverse group in that sense, and so that's different in some ways compared to the MPA, MPP students at George Washington, the Trachtenberg School, uh, which
Yeah,
was more homogeneous also. But they were
yeah,
bright kids there.
yeah. Um, as you know, I teach there part-time as well, and I did have the opportunity to teach at Cal State Northridge, in the university system, and it's too much of a drive for me with my kids to do it unless I'm really needing money. But I have done that, and what I love about City College is just like it's a place where lives are transformed, right? It's a place where students come to your classes and you have those ones who they're going to graduate from Berkeley or UCLA or Stanford, like they're on a track and they're going to get there and they're going to be great. But then there's those others who are just kind of like, well, I have to take this class, or I'm kind of interested in this class, and then by the time they're done, and it's a little bit different maybe in like a writing program with me because you get to know them a little bit, but the community college becomes their savior. It becomes the place where they found their purpose, where they found their mission, and they believe in themselves for the first time. Because unfortunately, our high schools tend to want to push people toward the university system. And for a lot of students, that's not the best way. They need to start a little bit in a different setting at a community college. And so I always love that about community college is that there's this whole group of people who don't really know if college is for them, or they believe they can get that 4-year degree, and then they get in the system and their eyes just become open, and it's just like the waters part and they believe in themselves. And that's like the unique thing about Santa Barbara City College and a lot of the community college system that a lot of people don't get to experience. And and so I know you're part of that, and you make a difference with local kids, people coming from San Diego because they want to come to Santa Barbara. And that's the great thing. At the university I taught at, Cal State Northridge, it was great too. It's like, but they're at the end, right? And they're just trying to get jobs. And it's just so cool to be at those formative stages when people are just freshmen, first semester, and you're teaching them, Stuart, like, here's how you be responsible. Here's how you organize. Here's how you think through things. Here's how you be a critical thinker and all of that. And so these are lifelong lessons, even if they don't remember anything in 20 years of your actual poli-sci 101 or whatever it is.
I, you know, yeah, that is, I mean, boy, that's great. That's really well spoken, well said. Getting them that idea of critical thinking, helping them be able to evaluate and understand issues. That is a lot of what I'm hoping to get to them to do. I also, I give credit for taking notes and submitting the notes that they take in class to just make them kind of better students, to help them.
Mm.
And for they go to the writing center. I try and do what I can to help them be better at the job of being students, as well as just being better citizens after the class, that they are just gonna, they don't, it's one of the things I don't know, I've heard this said before, but I don't know that students get civics in high school, and
No.
how much they actually learn of how the government works, of the what was that, those videos of I'm just a bill, that sort of thing.
Mhm.
I don't know that they get, here's how the fundamentals of government. And so some of it is going to be hopefully that they just understand uh, civics wise. Do you remember the movie Boyhood?
I didn't see that. No.
Oh,
Yeah.
but there's one scene where a boy comes up to the teacher and to somebody who's eating in a restaurant and says, "You told me, this, you can do better. Or what are you doing with your life or something when I was 17, 18, and it totally changed my life," something like that.
Mhm.
Now, I haven't had an experience of that sort, but that's what you're sort of describing, is that idea that those little kind of, you're lighting your sparks, or you're lighting some fires in people that'll steer them and really change who they are and where they go. And congratulations to you on having that feeling.
Yeah. Well, one thing about teaching writing is you really get to know somebody at their core because they're expressing themselves, and you can sort of hear their voice, you can read their voice. And the thing about journalists is so many of them are introverts. Like, they are people who have something to say, but have never found a vehicle or the confidence or the platform to be able to say it. Like the kids who get all the attention in high school are the extroverted, the athletes, the pep rally types, maybe even somebody who runs for ASG. And those people get a lot of attention largely through their personality. And journalists kind of have never, like, they have something to say, but they haven't figured out how to do that, and they're not comfortable doing those other things. But then they write it, they research, report, write a story, and then all of a sudden it's published, and they're like, "Wow, I did that! I create." And so then you see their confidence grow in their writing from the very beginning to the end of the semester, or longer in some cases if they stay in the program, and they're unrecognizable from who they were in the first place. And that's what's really cool about the community college. And I teach journalism, right? So that's even a smaller, finer number of students than poli sci, which is essential class that people have to take. So in so many ways, it's like in these classes, you find these people who are so powerful, but they don't know how to show that side of them yet. And through writing, as you know, you start grading papers, you read their thoughts, and you're like, wow, that's an amazing thought. Let me sort of bring a little bit more out of that. So yeah, I mean, obviously you love teaching at the community college. I love teaching there. You must teach on the other side of campus because I never run into you. I'm over by the administration in the administration building. So
No, I am too.
oh, okay.
That's where my office is on West Campus, but I teach on the east side. And
No.
so no, I'm in the same building. We just must teach at different times.
Yeah, we'll have to find a meeting spot and shoot the breeze sometime. Stuart, let's wrap up a little bit. You are running for reelection, and so maybe if you could maybe close out with, you know, why should people elect you again? It's a district election, so people kind of know you already, but you know, for people who are you know, first-time voters or thinking about whether they're going to vote for you again, you know, what is it that you bring to the council that's a unique, special package for voters?
Uh, I guess I'm on your side. It's that I live there and I drive on those roads. I experience those potholes, and I feel the same impacts that you do, and I think I am equipped to be able to better do something about it. We can't, both on my education and previous experience, I have the tools to be able to figure out solutions and be able to provide some answers. They're not always we don't have, unfortunately, the ability to do everything we want to do, whether it's limited by state government or whether it's by limited budget. But we can do as best we can under the circumstances and figure out how to get there. And I think I'm reasonably good at doing that. And I will, my priorities are, I think, consistent with the community's priorities, the neighborhood's priorities, and I'll pursue those things, whether it is, making sure our budget is well spent on the priorities that we have, including roads, addressing homelessness, and how do we kind of walk and chew gum at the same time when it comes to housing? How do we add the housing, making it affordable, but not sort of destroying the neighborhoods, the communities where we live, and figuring out. And I think we have a plan when it comes to housing, how to do that. We have the ability to reduce, for instance, the density of our proposed rezonings and have a buffer to offset. If we reduce, we can fill up elsewhere. So, I look forward to, I enjoy doing it, and I enjoy trying to, help people out, make a difference in the community. We have a lot of people who volunteer on our committees and our commissions who say they want to give back. That's routinely the expression that they use, and that's partly, what I'm doing too. It feels good to have that opportunity to do so. So, thank you.
Yeah. Well, great, Stuart. I'm so glad that you made some time today to talk and just share a little bit about your experiences on the council and your background and your history. And, I'm not lying, whenever I get the opportunity to cover one of your meetings, so it's like you can guarantee Stuart Kasdin is getting quoted because you have something to say and it's very thoughtful. So I appreciate your time, and we'll be talking more as we get closer to the election. And I'm sure that there's going to be a lot of interest. It's November, it's a presidential election, so it's going to be a lot of energy. So thanks a lot for your time.
Thanks. My pleasure.
Take care.
Take care, Josh.